oh, so they can taste something. But for other people, it's like, whoa, it's way too much.
I want the next census report to be, I'm getting older and I smoke a lot at home category.
I find that
rose by 3%.
But like Japanese food is the most refined, subtle flavors that I've had in Japan, and they smoke like chimneys.
That's true. They love them cigarettes over there. Most of Asia.
Then I don't know.
Maybe it's a white people. If white people smoke, our taste buds die.
Maybe it's the smoke in the kind of cheap liquor that you get from the well, like the well drink. That just kind of
it's the bad cigarettes. They have better cigarettes in Japan.
Yeah, that's true.
They have more nuanced cigarettes.
Yeah, they have more subtly flavored tar.
They have robot cigarettes. Or maybe they don't know that the subtlety's there and they're just making the food. They don't know.
Well, you know, it really depends on what the food is.
It's not subtle flavor. They think it's bland.
Most Japanese food is bland.
They're like, this is the discipline.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the key to Zen.
And the non-smoker's like, ooh, there's so many subtle flavors in here. This is amazing.
I'm really trying hard to pick them all out. Really, I am. Because really, it just tastes like you took one giant piece of fish and cut it into smaller pieces. Is that vinegar, or did you rub your foot over this?
Oh, please. That's disgusting.
I got a big laugh out of Scott. So
I think you're confusing Japan with California.
No.
Oh, hey, I want to acknowledge something in the pre-show. There's this bill being introduced to secure the Internet of Things, and I haven't covered it on the main show because I'm waiting to see if it gets any actual pickup, like if it makes it to the floor. Right now, it's just a bipartisan group proposing it. So if it gets out of committee, then I think I'll talk about it on the main show. It's not a bad idea.
How many sponsors does it have? 2 right now?
It's got 4.
Wow.
I think 2 Republican, 2 Democrat.
And can they do anything about it till they're back in September? Probably not. It's on recess right now, right?
Yeah. That I don't know about.
Secure the Internet of Things?
Yeah, so it would require Internet of Things vendors to provide internet-connected equipment to the U.S. government to ensure products are patchable and conform to industry standards. That's the other part of it. It really only affects U.S. purchasing, U.S. government purchasing of Internet of Things, but the idea is that would have a cascade effect.
Yeah, because, well, okay, let's say you're just talking about light bulbs and a weird Wi-Fi enabled toaster as an example.
So you have to make sure it's patchable, that you can change the password from default, which sometimes devices don't do. All that kind of
You guys heard about the Broadcom hack, I'm sure.
Which one?
The one that Android and iPhone patched earlier this week.
Yeah. Totally.
Like that kind of crap is scary, and apparently IoT stuff is riddled with it.
Yeah.
IoT was designed to be connected, not
Easily.
protected. Oh, I like that slogan. I'm going to put it on a billboard.
Not protect.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That sounds like it could be used for 70s free love.
All right, you guys ready to go?
Think so?
Let's do this.
That's Johnny on the time spot. This is great.
I know.
Where is my...
Oh, I didn't actually mean Johnny like John Schiefer.
No, I'm taking it.
He reacts to that the same way I do to peeping Tom, Scott. So just
okay.
Hiding.
Where's Dick and Harry? I always say when I see Tom.
Peeping implies malice.
3, 2.
The Daily Tech News Show is powered by its listeners, not outside organizations. If you get value from the show, consider giving a little back. As little as $1 a month keeps great tech news and analysis coming your way commercial-free. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017. I'm Tom Merritt. I almost said October for some reason, even though it says August right there in front of me. Joining me, Scott Johnson in the house. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's something about the part, because on Tuesday's TMS this week, I did the same exact thing and couldn't figure out why. So now that you've done it, I feel weirdly better.
We're so cold inside of our air conditioning. It feels like October. Hey, joining us today also, philosopher and filmmaker John Schiefer is with us. John, good to have you back.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure and honor.
We'll talk a little bit more about this a little later in the show as well, but you have a film that was made a couple of years ago, and you're working on a new project, which is a series.
Yes, sir. Algorithm is thehackermovie.com has 10.3 million views on YouTube, and my current one is called Intelligent Design at sci-fi-and-spies.com.
I like that your URL explains what intelligent design is about.
Yeah, you know what? I tried finding intelligent design or intelligent design movie or show, and they were all taken. So I just had to, get creative. And
Yeah, it works.
turns out people don't use descriptives.
All right. Well, we're going to talk to John a little bit about his position as a creator, as a filmmaker, as a video producer on things like DRM and crowdfunding. But let's start with a few tech things you should know. Facebook announced that faster load time will make a story appear higher in people's news feed on mobile. This is rolling out over the next few weeks. Load time will be estimated based on the user's network speed and the usual load time of the page. So the page needs to be fast and your connection needs to be fast. One example would be if you're on a really slow mobile connection, they won't put a bunch of videos in your news feed.
Okay, fine. I still say that their big priority right now should be to go make Messenger not look like a clown car covered in stickers.
I think they could do both of those. Those are two different teams. Yeah.
Okay, good. Maybe they've got the money and the resources or something.
Clown car.
Is there a way to artificially simulate that so that I can make the videos not load?
There you go. There's the idea. Yeah, no, you just need a crappy connection, fiddle with your Wi-Fi, give it some problems, and you'll get exactly what you're looking for. Skype, speaking of this software and things, Skype has added PayPal integration to its Android and iOS apps in 22 countries. That includes the U.S. PayPal joins YouTube and Giphy as basically new add-in services for mobile on Skype. Skype becoming Snapchat really in a lot of ways, but this is, I guess, okay. I don't know that I care to. Well,
I mean, if I'm chatting with you in Skype or talking to you on a call, and suddenly you're like, "Oh, hey, I need to pay you back for that $20 for dinner the other day," I can just do it right in Skype.
Don't you feel like the evolution of Skype recently has been a little abrupt? Like it's just kind of, whoa, what happened to my app kind of moments are happening. My mom, for example, she's like virtually can't use Skype now because it's nothing like it used to be.
Yeah, whenever they change an interface, it takes forever for people to adapt to it.
Yep.
Hyperloop One announced on July 29th, or they announced today that back on July 29th, at its 500-meter test track in Nevada, its first pod, that means the whole thing, not just the sled, reached a peak speed of 310 kilometers per hour. That's the fastest Hyperloop test yet. John, I know you're excited about this.
I love the idea of public transportation, and the big issue is individual last mile kind of stuff, and Musk is working on a solution for that. So the sooner the better for me.
Yeah, and this is unmanned, right, Tom? This didn't have a dude in it.
I don't believe there were any dudes or even mannequins in it.
And no monkeys, no more apes.
No dogs, nothing.
Yeah, I saw something recently that indicates the apes may rise up and take us over. So
that was that documentary, War for the Planet of the Apes. I saw that too.
Yeah, really good documentary. Hope it wins all the awards in the documentary category this year at the Oscars. Instagram says users younger than 25 use the app for 32 minutes a day. That app being Instagram, of course. And those 25 and older use it for 24 minutes a day. Instagram stories have 250 million daily users as well. More than 166 million Snapchat reported in May. So pretty good numbers for Instagram. What intrigues me is this weird little subdata, like older than, less than, certain age stuff is fascinating to me. I would have expected those numbers, the 32 minutes and the 24 minutes, to be a little more disparate, but
the big thing here is these are better numbers than Snapchat.
Yeah.
And the big question has been, can Snapchat survive in the onslaught of Instagram copying most of their features? And the stock market, anyway, thinks no. It does not look like they can, because user growth is slowing for Snapchat. And now Instagram Stories has people spending more time with it than people, at least the last time Snapchat reported numbers, which has been a while, but it at least looks like they're spending more time in Instagram than Snapchat. I mean, do you guys think this is the end for Snapchat?
Well, I'm going to say something sort of infantile, but I'm going to say it. Weirdly, I don't usually get involved in sort of the Coke and Pepsi fight of brands or anything, but I'm rooting for Instagram in this fight, and I have been since the beginning, because I think Snapchat is annoying and weird. There, I've said it. Send your emails to me directly. Don't bother Tom.
Shots fired at Snapchat. John?
I've also been a little confused by Snapchat, but I think that it's going to be interesting as their user base ages to see how that metric plays out over time.
I didn't
Assuming
even really,
either of these exist in 10 years.
Yeah. I didn't really think this was even much of a news story. I'm like, Instagram's doing okay. I guess if you're really into Snapchat stock, this is an important thing to note. But now that I've heard you guys talk, I'm cheering for Snapchat to feel like the underdog suddenly.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want them to go away. They have an important thing to do in today's market and stuff, but I don't know. I feel like on the one hand, Instagram kind of takes their ideas, runs with them, and does pretty well with them. So you could say that's an argument against Instagram, but for whatever reason, Snapchat just feels like a foreign land to me, and Instagram are where my people are. So
and that's what it's always about, is where your friends are. And I've got more people that use Instagram that I know than use Snapchat these days. So yep. Apple beat expectations. We mentioned some of these numbers yesterday because they were breaking right as we were doing the show. Revenue of $45.4 billion. That's up 7.2% year over year. Net profit of $8.7 billion. That was down from last year's $10.7 billion. All product categories grew, including iPad. Cut the price of the iPad and sales went up 15%. Apple sold more than 41 million phones in Q3. That was up just a little bit, 1.6% from last year. Sales in China fell 9.5%. Now, we mentioned that yesterday, but what I didn't know when we mentioned that number is the largest decline came from Hong Kong. Sales on the mainland were largely unchanged. Apple's spending more on research and development, too, up 15% year over year to $2.9 billion. And here's the big one. Apple is projecting revenue for next quarter of $49 to $52 billion. That is a lot more than people thought they would project. Apple generally projects a conservative estimate. And so a lot of investors that were afraid that iPhone sales might take a hit next quarter because there's all these rumors about the iPhone having manufacturing problems, they're starting to calm down because they're like, look, if Apple thinks they can sell that many iPhones and their numbers are usually conservative, they must not be worried. And finally, CFO Luca Maestri on the earnings call said that Apple Pay accounted for 90% of global NFC mobile payments.
They're probably very happy with that number. The projected revenue, though, is interesting in that, well, at least what it tells me is that they're confident in whatever their quote unquote 10th anniversary iPhone or iPhone 8 or whatever it's going to be is significant steps forward. I'm making a narrative in my head here why I think this is true, but if you're going to project that kind of revenue and do it with some confidence to your shareholders, it feels like maybe you know something. And what they may know is that this is a big leap, that the 8th phone is the one to get. People sitting, on their iPhone 5Ss for this long are ready to go. So that, as an iOS and an iPhone user, gets me kind of excited for what may come despite all the rumors to the contrary.
I think there's something really interesting that's happening with them. I recently switched from a MacBook Pro to an iPad Pro as my primary productivity tool, and that didn't used to be viable when the iPad first came out. Now, with what I do, as long as it's not hardcore filmmaking and rendering stuff, the iPad Pro is amazing. One of the things it seriously lacked is the file management system, and the new iOS update is going to fix that. So it's possible that a lot of people will switch to the iPad as a productivity tool once file management is better.
Yeah, and iOS 11 is going to bring in all kinds of other improvements along those same lines. So I think that will help. I have to say this. I just have to say this. We have avoided talking about a lot of the rumors flying around about iPhones, and I have a big problem with calling it a delay. The news cycle does this quite often. They hear a rumor that such and such is going to happen. 10th anniversary iPhone with a fingerprint sensor under the screen and all of this stuff. Then they hear, oh, I guess they're not going to do that. It's delayed. Oh, they can't do that. It's not delayed. Apple never announced anything. It's not delayed if they never scheduled it.
Yeah.
So all these Apple's going to face, they're not facing delays. And what this earnings report, which is the first piece of actual news about this, indicates is whatever they do have planned, they think is going to sell well. Maybe it's never been a 10th anniversary edition, and that was all fog, or maybe they were considering one and have decided against it. But yeah, I mean, people get caught up into hearing a rumor and then internalizing it as fact, and then follow-up rumors building on that and create a whole narrative that may or may not even exist.
Yeah, it's slightly annoying, and I'm tired of explaining to people what what I actually know about it, because no one wants to be that guy either.
Yeah.
Party. Plex in the news took its live TV and DVR service out of beta on Wednesday, that's today, and expanded the feature to Apple TV and Android apps. Plex also added the ability to pause, rewind, and fast forward live television. The feature is available for subscribers of the Plex Pass service using a compatible TV tuner. And I personally know a few Plex folks, friends of mine, who are really excited about this. And then there's me, who runs a very simple Plex server for free, and it doesn't really do any of these features.
You don't do the Plex Pass thing, huh?
No. I mean, maybe I will. I need to perhaps be convinced, but I think Plex is pretty rad in all of its incarnations, and this seems to, this is good news for everybody who's paying.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're in the Plex universe at all, or even considering it, and you've been wondering, like, what's a good way to do over the air, this is the way. You get one of those Hopage tuners or maybe an HD home run. You put that in a place where you get good reception, so it gives you some flexibility, and then you can use it anywhere on your network. There's other things like Simple TV and Tableau that do a similar thing, but Plex does so many other things on top of it. It's really, really good. John, I don't know if you've ever played around with any of this stuff.
I have been thinking about switching to a Plex server instead of all my DVDs and Blu-rays. The issue I have is that I need color fidelity, and there's no real way to get that with compression. And as far as I'm aware, I don't think the Plex server will allow hosting ISOs.
Yeah, that's a good question. If anybody knows how to do that in Plex, send us an email and I'll forward it on to John.
There's probably some export stuff you could do.
There may be, yeah.
Post-production stuff, but I think you're right for the most part, especially when you're talking about Blu-ray high-def content. You are going to lose a bunch of that with compression. That being said, though, I'm always impressed with how well everything looks to me, and I'm not as concerned about that stuff as John might be, but I don't really see much of a difference when I'm consuming that content versus, especially with DVDs, because the DVDs are already, 640, 480, whatever, older resolutions, and the upscale looks great on my TVs. Really no complaints here. The bigger question for me is what would push me over the edge to go with the Plex Pass, and maybe this stuff's it.
Yeah. IBM and Sony have developed a magnetic tape system capable of storing a theoretical maximum of 330 terabytes. I didn't note the aerial density, so I'm going to try to grab that real quick here too, because it's pretty crazy. But this is huge, and it's tape. Now, granted, this is enterprise level stuff, and it's used for storage. Not, you're not going to pop this in your laptop or anything. 201 gigabits of data per square inch.
I'm actually looking forward to that coming out, because the current project I mentioned, Intelligent Design, one instance of it is 500 terabytes.
Yeah. So you could have two of these palm-sized devices.
Yeah, that's an amazingly useful feature for me as long-term storage backup.
Sony developed the higher density magnetic tape part of the system by using something called sputtering to lay down magnetic grains that are a few nanometers in size. And then IBM developed the new 48 nanometer wide tunneling magneto-resistive head that reads that. Sony also developed some lubricant that helps the tape speed through a little faster as well. IBM did some servo-tech magic to read the data, and it's huge and fast.
Not to get picky about
magnetic tape,
but I don't know if I'd call it sputtering. I think that tech should be called something else. Sputtering is what your broken car or your jammed up 3D printer does. So,
well, it's kind of, I mean, I don't want to get too far into explaining this, but as I understand it, sputtering is kind of like what your jammed up 3D printer, that's how it works, because it's able to cover a little bit, cover the area a little bit better because of that.
I mean, the tech sounds awesome. I mean, I think it's funny that we're talking about tape, but this isn't the same content.
I know. Yeah.
Backup tape in the past. This is not your grandpa's DAT tape, everybody. The first block of the new Bitcoin Cash fork was processed Tuesday and began trading between $300 and $700 per coin, US dollars, while the original Bitcoin trades at around $2,700 per coin. Coinbase, the largest Bitcoin exchange, does not support Bitcoin Cash, meaning those who store Bitcoin at Coinbase are not receiving Bitcoin Cash. A group has threatened a class action lawsuit against Coinbase if it does not change the decision by the 15th of this month. We talked about this a bunch on TMS. Tom made pretty good sense of this whole thing leading up to this point. Still kind of wrapping my head around what a Bitcoin fork means for me in the real world. But I feel like this is going to get weirder before it gets settled to me.
Yeah. It's still early days. In fact, right now, as we're recording this, Bitcoin Cash is trading at $356. So it's spiked way up at like 727 and then fell back down today. It's going to be volatile for a while until we get an idea of how many people are actually using it versus speculating with it, how many people are actually mining it, and all of that sort of thing. But, you know, the upshot is if you have Bitcoins that aren't being held in an exchange like Coinbase, for instance, you can go through a little process to then get the equivalent amount of Bitcoin Cash. Boom, like that.
So, John, you're a philosophy guy. I'll bet this whole Bitcoin blockchain thing has to be fascinating for somebody like you who's sort of into the idea of paradigm shifts and having us think about things in different ways. Certainly Bitcoin does that in a monetary way.
They're both both the blockchain and decentralized currencies are intensely fascinating as an idea. There's a couple issues I have with Bitcoin specifically, which is that most of it's used for illicit transactions. Now, I shouldn't say that. Largely, it's considered either illicit transactions or its functionality is as a standard security, meaning like a stock or bond.
Yeah. Not a holder of value rather than a transactor of value.
And until it switches to a transactor of value that's in common usage and the government decides, hey, you don't actually need to keep track of its value for the duration of your possession of it and pay taxes accordingly on the income of its radical fluctuating value, I don't think it's going to be very useful.
Yeah.
MWR Info security researcher Mark Barnes has detailed a hack to monitor the audio stream from the mic of an Amazon Echo. His hack works against Amazon Echoes made in 2015 and 2016. More recent versions, 2017 models, are not susceptible. And don't get too freaked out. The hack requires physical access to the target Echo. Barnes had to pull back the rubber bottom, tap into the debug pads on the base of the Echo to monitor boot up. Then he got some configuration information that allowed him to create an SD card that the Echo would boot from. So you still need physical access for this part as well, giving root shell access, allowing, among other things, the ability to send audio to remote servers. And then after that, he doesn't have to continue to have access to it. He could have everything sending to the server. But he points out, you know, people take their Amazon Echoes with them traveling or something like that. This could be used, or somebody in a very, you know, unusual situation could break into someone's house and perform this to use it as a tap, the same way they could put a bug in your phone or something like that back in the olden days, right?
I was going to say, this is what this sounds like, is a movie tap. Sounds like something going into a hotel room and swapping out the mouthpiece on a phone. It's really not that different than that, except that sounds like it's, you know, there's a little bit of work involved, but that'd be a pretty ingenious way of catching what everybody's saying in the room constantly at a pretty good fidelity, I might add. The Echo tends to, you know, make you sound real good coming in and out of it. This isn't a crappy phone connection with potential interference or sort of crunchy audio to begin with. So that's a little scary. You know, I don't know why higher fidelity makes me more nervous, but it does. But anyway, yeah, like you said, you got to have access to the thing. And that sounds like a big pain in the butt for your average, you know,
it probably would be easier to just put an old-fashioned bug hidden like in a plant or something.
That's what I keep thinking. Or like the people who have access to break into my house easily also have access to high-level man-in-the-middle attacks and hack my phone. So
no, exactly. It is one of the points I forget to make sometimes when we start talking about, I don't want that Amazon Echo. It's got a microphone on it and it's listening all the time. And I try to reassure people like, no, people have audited this. It's only keeping it up to 3 seconds at a time just to listen for the wake word. And it doesn't start recording unless it hears the wake word. And yes, it might accidentally hear the wake word when you didn't mean to say it. And that's a risk. And it's got a mute button, all this. But the whole idea of like, yeah, but there's a mic all the time. Everybody who carries a smartphone with them has a mic with them all the time. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to Daily Tech Headlines at dailytechheadlines.com, on the Amazon Echo, and in the Anchor app in the App Store. And that's a look at the top stories. All right. Intelligent Design, the series by Jonathan Schiefer, coming out soon. You have made your previous works available online. You're intending to make this one available online, and you're crowdfunding it. I like your approach to this, but I want you to explain to people, as a creator, as an artist, what are your feelings on DRM, on access control?
I think that DRM was a bad idea to begin with, and I think it continues to be a bad idea. From a capitalistic perspective, it's better idea just to give stuff to people when they want it. Doubly so in the internet age. Even in the past, mixtapes were handed around with cassette tapes. Now that we're in the digital age, it's Command C, Command V. So it's an act of futility, and by not appeasing to the people who want to watch stuff when they want to watch it or listen, like Spotify or Apple Music do, they are losing a ton of money. The hackers and pirates with whom I've spoken have said that they will happily pay a reasonable fee to have access to stuff, and the staggering rise of Netflix and Spotify and other subscription services, I think, prove that out. From a political perspective, a democratization of information perspective, I think it's far worse. The founding fathers of this country, the United States, it made copyright in existence largely so that creators can make money and have a living so that they can keep creating stuff. That was 15 years. It has since gone on to be life of the author plus 70 years, which is absurd and means that everything after the existence of Mickey Mouse will never be public domain. And that, I think, really limits people's access to information.
Well, but okay. There is, of course, I think people can follow the argument that overly restrictive copyright law can reduce speech, can reduce change of ideas, can be used as a chilling effect. But from your perspective, even if they just kind of scaled that back, isn't DRM a good thing in helping you sell things? How are you supposed to make your money otherwise?
I think that is the big problem. And I don't think it's just DRM and intellectual copyright issues. I think we are coming into essentially what is a decentralizing of power, not just with intellectual property. Even Bitcoin is an effort to decentralize control and power. The act of creating a country based on the will of the people is decentralizing power. And that's really what DRM kind of gets in the way of. I do need to make money as a creative. Like, I enjoy ramen, but it's not healthy to eat every day. My hair will fall out and I will die. Tests have been done involuntarily.
He's speaking of instant ramen, folks, not the the expensive good ramen that you get at the noodle bar.
$7 ramen you can get at Mitsuwa or in Japan, totally worth it. But that's not what I eat when I'm poor and hungry.
Right.
So from that point of view, like I think we're at the place where I think DRM doesn't do, for the people who really use it, which is the big studios, they have the distribution power to put everything everywhere the moment they want to. So their excuse for having it is like, they can make it in the way that people want it now, and region encoding and all that stuff does them a disservice. For creatives like me, I think that it's at the other end where, like what I'm doing with intelligent design, we get to give access to the decision, to the green lighting of projects to people, so that the best projects or the projects that people want to see rise. So I think it's an extension of copyright. It's gone too far. Creatives need to make money, but I don't think that that's what this is anymore.
Now, how are you feeling about crowdfunding these days? You're about 15 days away, as we're recording this, from the end of the Kickstarter. It looks like you're about halfway down the process, and you've crowdfunded previous things as well.
There's been some people who have done crowdfunding in a way that really burnt a lot of people out, and that's a shame. But I think that would be saying that crowdfunding is over, or that it doesn't have a place, or that it's not useful, would be like saying the internet isn't useful because NSA uses it to track us. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, it can do that, but it can also be this powerful democratizing force for any number of things.
It's interesting, because don't you think part of having done a fair number of Kickstarter projects myself, there definitely was that kind of honeymoon period where everybody was funding everything and it was super exciting. And it was this great new way to fund cool projects. And then, like anything that has a rapid rise and a big uptick, there became, projects that were fraudulent, or at the very least less than ethical, or that fell through or that were fake altogether or whatever. And you started kind of having some of those problems, and even had some high level ones that made a lot of promises and didn't keep those promises, especially in the games area, which is a strong sector for Kickstarter.
Movies too. Movies did it too.
Well, sure. So what you end up with now is, I wouldn't call it a backlash, but we're definitely at that stage of like, well, now, caution should be used, and the Kickstarters had to beef up some of their rules, and you have all these adjustments. But is it just that, an adjustment, and where do you see the future of that kind of thing? Say 5 years from now, when we've kind of gotten through this more cautious era of crowdfunding.
I think maybe it's like we have all of these amazing tools, and like the minimum viable product idea, we're not really sure what to do with them. Like the existence of a hammer before the nail, you have this great tool, but what's it for other than bashing your neighbor on the head? We don't know. Maybe we should wait for somebody else to invent something that's useful. I think it has these powerful democratization aspects to it, and that's kind of what I'm using it for. The counter to that is that the issue of democratization means that everybody's voice is on equal footing, which means that there's a lot more noise to rise above, and that's another issue that really makes it a questionable tool for like viability for realistic budget stuff.
Also, I think it's a different world when people see crowdfunding as one of their options to support things, and the other being the old-fashioned way, which is I pay a ticket to go to a movie theater or buy a DVD or something like that. That model is I, as an executive, decide to authorize a creator to do something in a way that I think will be profitable, then pour a lot of money into marketing to hedge my bet and hope that I'm right. And convince people to go see it. And there's a certain, I don't think people can be fooled into seeing something that's bad all the time, but certainly the needle can be moved, and things that wouldn't survive on their own merits do catch people into coming in with marketing. If everything was crowdfunding, it would be marketing up front. I have an idea I want to do, and people would say, okay, I want to see you execute that idea. And right now we have a little bit of both. We have the majority of the old way, we have a little bit of the new way, and so people are going to be less willing to spend their money on the new way until it becomes the dominant way.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm trying to kind of segue into, is that a lot of people in Hollywood, they simply, like, you cannot make a movie on the amount of monies that are being raised on crowdfunding with things like Zach Braff, who even raised $6 million for Veronica Mars. Like, he had other financing, which is why it ended up going on Ultraviolet instead of some other place that's more accessible. That needs to change for it to be viable for premium content level stuff, and I'm trying to convince people to do that, and we'll just see if it's willing.
Yeah, willing. That's the question: is will that thing bear it? And if it will, I'm not sure we've seen yet. We know there's a lot of middle ground that it'll bear. In some ways, it's become a storefront. It's like a place for somebody to say, "Hey, I'm going to make a board game, and get your copy here by supporting the Kickstarter." But really, at the end of the day, it's a store. And it's a successful store for a lot of people. In fact, as much as it was about me creating my compilation book for my comic strip, it worked in that way, but it also worked as a great way to be the avenue to which they were sold. So you support it, you buy a thing. I worry sometimes that if it gets bogged down too much in being, quote unquote, a store for people to sell a thing they're going to make, and less of a let's have this idea go to full fruition, you may never crest the numbers that you may need to do the bigger production, especially in your world.
That's a great point, because like Tom was getting at, if the advertising has to come first, you're really only going to get to the people who have investors up front, who have the advertising money budget to promote stuff in a gnarly way. And that's exactly, I think, what the tool isn't. Like, we already have a perfectly viable medium for that called theaters. Or other game.
Yeah, or stores. And,
sure.
Yeah. things like that. Well, thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. It helps us come up with these topics. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. You can also make suggestions at facebook.com/dailytechnewsshow. Let's check in with the amateur traveler who has an answer, actually, to Veronica's question from last week.
This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler with another Tech in Travel Minute. First off, in answer to a question that was asked by Veronica last week on the show, why we hadn't covered yet on this segment the new bus service that is an overnight bus from San Francisco to Los Angeles called Ride Cabin. It's because I couldn't find the tech angle, although we did talk about it on the latest issue of This Week in Travel. But thinking of things with a tech angle, Hotels.com wants you to travel abroad and they're willing to buy you a passport. Or sort of. What they're going to do is if you book a hotel room for an international travel, they will give you $110 off, and that is the price of a U.S. passport. So one less reason to stay home. I'm Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler.
Thank you, Chris. And our message of the day comes from Tim D., who says, when it comes to biometrics, a good rule of thumb, I don't know if Tim did that on purpose, but get it? Thumb, biometrics. Is that if it can be used to convict you of a crime, it's probably not great for securing your information because you leave it behind everywhere you go. Using something like fingerprints for access is easy and convenient, but not necessarily secure. As Tom mentioned, adding a second factor dramatically increases the security as long as the provider implements it securely. Thanks, and keep up the amazing work. Thank you, Tim D.
Nice.
Yeah. Your DNA is also all over the place from your hair, things like that, skin cells.
Not my hair, but somebody's.
Your skin cells, skin flakes, all kinds of stuff. That's it for this episode of Daily Tech News Show. John Schiefer, thank you so much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure and an honor, sirs.
Now, tell us a little bit more about intelligent design and why people should head to sci-fi-and-spies.com and back it right now.
Intelligent Design is a 36-hour series, realistic sci-fi and spies drama thriller. It is not creationist propaganda, as the title may imply to some. I've gotten that feedback. The idea is that we can be intentional about the world that we design and how that looks.
And you can go check it out. It's about sci-fi and spies.
Yeah.
And you can remember that by going to sci-fi-and-spies.com.
Perfect.
That should be easy. Thank you, Scott Johnson, as well. What do you got to tell folks about today?
Always a pleasure, Tom. I would like to tell the folks who listen to this show on the daily, if you'd like daily things and you want to fill your day with even more things on the daily, you can check out my daily morning show Monday through Thursday, actually twice on Thursdays. You can find that at the morning stream over at frogpants.com/TMS. And it's a little more lighthearted look at the world. Tom comes on Wednesdays. You get a taste of Tom that morning as well. Always a good time. Do check it out. Again, that is frogpants.com/TMS or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks to everybody who gives a little value back for the value they get from the show, including Alex McQuilkin, Jeremy Esposito, Patricia Fernandez, and many, many more at patreon.com/DTNS. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 20:30 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. Our website is dailytechnewsshow.com, and our guest tomorrow is my co-host, Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show, you guys.
Hey, great.
The morning stream.
Great. Titles?
Yeah, what do we got?
We got Scott Snaps on Snapchat. Instagram is where my people are. It's not delayed, you're just wrong. Unscheduled delayed, rewinding back to tape. Tape is the future, DRM, digital resultsless management. There's a version of that, diminishing results management. Skype, pal. Now your grandpa's to tape.
I like digital wrong management.
Yeah.
Digital wrong management.
Although that's a W.
Yeah, you have to misspell it.
Which is, I think, ironic.
Yeah.
Right?
Even ironic spell with a W.
Ironic.
You ran a crowdfunding campaign, didn't you, Tom, for your book?
No, not for my book. I've run Kickstarters for FSL Tonight and for 10 State. Yeah, I was for the comic book. I ran a Kickstarter, and then you know what? I take that back. I see what you're talking about. Inkshares, which is in fact a crowdfunding campaign. I kind of forget that
You're
fits
busy,
that
dude.
definition. Yeah,
Which is a whole-
I feel Inkshares is very much pre-orders, but it is exactly what we're talking about, where you go and say like, "Hey, I've got this book. If enough of you pre-order it, we'll make it."
Yeah, I'm convinced. We could have probably talked about this on the show. It would have been a good thing. I guess the people after the fact will hear this, but it could be an interesting discussion to talk about that specialization effect. Like maybe that's the future of this stuff, where Inkshares zero it in on books. And so crowdfund books, make all of the tools significant to that process. And
like if there was an Inkshares for movies or TV shows.
And there's already, I forgot the name of it, but there's that video game one that a bunch of them jumped out and made. I forgot the name of it. But there's an attempt there. There could be attempts with other hot categories, like the board gaming stuff on Kickstarter is huge. So I can see that being its own thing. But really specialize and service that kind of attention could be the way to do it. I mean, Inkshares is sort of proving that out. It's
right, because you don't have to raise all the money to make the book like you would on Kickstarter. You have to just raise the orders to make it worth the while for Inkshares to do the production of it. So they take out half of the process out of your hands and act like a traditional publisher.
Yep. Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
So you could do a movie studio version of Inkshares that's like, we'll do promotion and distribution and screenings and all of that if you can get enough people to say, yes, we'll pop down money for a ticket.
There was a recent sci-fi movie that came out a few months ago called Colossal, and they're kind of taking it in the direction of after the crowdfunding sites end or beyond them, we can go to the production company itself being democratized on the same level that a Kickstarter campaign might be, except not on Kickstarter anymore. It's just direct. Yeah. And the government, because of companies like Kickstarter paving the way for other companies, the government has kind of like reconsidered qualified investing and those kinds of things, so that people can get a return without having to be a qualified multi-million-dollar investor.
Yeah.
So those are also possible directions it could go. Like I said, I just think it's a new cool tool that we have, and we really don't know what it's for. It's for whatever we use it for.
Yeah, to be determined, kind of.
Well, and I do think that if it lasts, which right now it looks like it will, like it's survived some of those early death blow type things, like hoaxes and stuff like that. Eventually, people will start thinking of it as a normal way to shop for their entertainment.
Well, like what blogging eventually created the venue for you guys to be able to do this, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it could. We really don't know what it is.
Right.
I just hope that unlike blogging leading to Gawker and fake news kind of stuff, that it doesn't eventually just people get burnt out, so that there is no true source for anything.
I feel like that's just a natural media cycle. I mean, the fake news of the 1700s was pamphleteers, and it's like, the darn printing press made it so that anybody can print up lies about Thomas Jefferson, and then eventually
William
we
Randolph Hearst was similar stuff.
Oh yeah, yellow journalism in the early part of the 20th century, absolutely. We go through these cycles where that happens, and then the industries sort of rally and say, okay, let's come up with best practices to prevent against that, and the market drives out the worst practices, and then cycle, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. Just jeez, what was that?
What was that?
I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Is that me? No, it can't be.
I don't know. It sounded like someone was coughing in a wind tunnel.
Yeah. Huh. That was really weird.
Yeah. I hope whoever that was is okay.
No, it might have been. Oh, you know what? It's because a pop-up window came out open.
Longer.
What was it advertising, out of curiosity?
You know what?
Today in Screams Near You.
Yeah.
I kind of just closed it without thinking because I can't hear.
Okay.
I can't hear it.
Probably
like you
a good
hear
idea.
it, but I can't hear it.
It was
I-
bad.
Why is that? That's weird.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
I can't hear things.
Because that's not the ideal setting,
No, it's not.
obviously.
You hear this?
This is Black Jeopardy.
This is Jeopardy! Yeah, we hear that.
So why can you hear that and I can't? I should be able to hear that.
Roger's still working on the settings.
Man, this is really chafing my head
I hear
because I can hear your.
I'm calling this diminishing results management. What do you guys think?
I like it.
Yeah,
Sure.
good.
All right.
No, just Keenan Ivory Williams. No, Keenan Ivory Williams. Keenan Thompson.
Ah, okay.
You
From
know,
SNL.
like, who the heck is that?
You guys are. So I have a question for you, Tom. This is kind of something that's been weighing on my mind for a while. It's like, as I promote stuff as an independent guy, and as a philosopher and journalist, I think you'll find it an intriguing question. Like, I'm kind of like, how far can you and I become friends before we start compromising journalistic integrity?
Oh, you mean like
Philosophical question. I love it.
where
This
where
is not at all
I'm
hypothetical because I really like you and I like some other reviewers.
sure. And so if I were to say go see John's work, people should stop trusting me because I like John and I'm likely to. I mean, I think that's just natural bias. The stuff that I worry about is when John is paying me, which he's not, or things like that where I'm really motivated. But I don't think people being friends is any different than people just having really liked a series. And so the future versions of the series, they're more willing to what to like as well.
Yeah, I would also add to that the podcasting world is so back patty, like we're always helping each other out, and I mean that in a positive, non-pejorative way. Like there's real value, there's a currency, and my audience is exposed to you, your audience is exposed to me. We are exchanging audiences in a way that you couldn't do in any other situation, and we can do projects together that turn into cooler things down the road. And I mean, I feel like that's kind of what this is or could be.
And I think as long as you're upfront about it, I don't like pretend like, oh, I've never met him before and I'm now looking at his movie for the first time. Like that, you just have to be clear and transparent, and I think it's okay.
Well, I think, Scott, you touched on a point. I think one of the issues that I am trying to promote with intelligent design is that the real currency isn't the money, it's the people. And in democracy, the more people you can get to do stuff, the more effective your change will be. And you guys are kind of like sharing the audience that you built over years.
Yeah.
And like I try and pimp your stuff when it's possible. And
thank you. I
And
appreciate
crossover
that.
because, like I said, I like what you guys do, and I like you as a person.
Yeah.
So
I think those are, as long as we're not, like if we started the show and say, here is a stranger to us who we've never spoken to before, who we are going like just are real open about it. Like, dude, I totally dug your book, or I loved your movie, or I checked out your drawing, or whatever it is. That kind of transparency is also part of the equation I was describing earlier.
Yeah.
Like
so as long as it's not like what is it called? Native content?
Native
Native
roots,
advertising.
native ads.
Right. As long as there's no like quid pro quo, because I'm not requiring anything of you. You're not requiring anything of me. There's no money changing hands. I think people are pretty used to that sort of like, oh yeah, I show up on his show, he shows up on my show, or the equivalent thereof if it's not both shows. Plus, I just you don't see it, but I don't have people come on the show if I don't like what they're doing. And you're never aware of that because they're not on the show.
Cool. No, that really, as long as money doesn't change hands, ethics are clean, pretty much, or the
That's what it
equivalent of
seems
money.
like, yeah. All right, and I don't do this. I'm too old school, but I know people who are like, oh yeah, this guy paid me to look at his device and I'm reviewing it on my YouTube channel, and I'm telling you that he paid me, and people seem okay with that these days as long as you're upfront about it.
Yeah, like one of the crazy things about YouTube, I probably should have gotten into this, is the other side of DRM is that by putting the algorithm on YouTube, which currently gets 5,000 views a day, algorithm is currently making $15 a month in advertising.
Just sitting there.
Yeah, well, yeah. So do the math. You end up with 180,000 views.
Yeah.
And I'm getting $15.
Yeah. Well, it's because of the scale. YouTube looks at that and is like, yeah, but we're doing this many billion views a day, and the people who have 1 million views a day are making a lot more money.
I thought that's what it was too, and I checked into it. It's their new once they started governing trolls. It's because I made well, it isn't even that. It's because I made a movie for adults, and they're curtailing their advertising AI toward children-based content. So my stuff,
because YouTube Kids is so hot.
It's really only being monetized by 5,000 views a month. So that $15 is the 5,000 views a month of people who want to advertise to people with actual money.
And that's always, and people, I know a lot of YouTubers look at that and they start crying foul. And I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, that was like when Buzz Out Loud was getting 2 million uniques a month and they couldn't sell it. And that was a company. Like, You're basically
Breaking Bad had the same issue. Like, how do we get people to advertise on a show about drugs?
Whenever you're outsourcing your sales to someone else, you're at the mercy of what they can sell. And even if you were selling it yourself, you may not be able to find buyers for it all the time. So it's tough. And that's why I think that sales is just advertisements are just one way to fund things, and I'm glad we're exploring all of these different opportunities. And we haven't talked about Patreon, but obviously that's working for DTNS, is to say, hey, we'll give you the show. If you like it, you keep it going by funding it, and if you fund it a little more, we'll give you a few extra things.
Yeah, one of the writers on my on Intelligent Design, he and his fiance have a YouTube channel, and they don't monetize it all. They do, only through Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's enough for them to almost be ready to quit their day jobs.
Because you're cutting out the middleman there. See, for instance, when Buzz Out Loud had all these viewers, but they weren't selling it, it was because the companies were saying, well, we don't want to take the risk of giving you money because we're not convinced that those people who hear our message will spend their money with us. And when you cut that out and say, instead of you go spend money with this other thing because we'll get a cut of it and you'll support the show, you just say, hey, how about you spend less money directly on the show and we'll make more money, and then everybody wins.
Yeah.
That's a good argument. I'm going to keep that. That's my argument now.
Yeah.
Like it changed the whole dichotomy, being able to just go direct to.
So is Frog Pants primarily Patreon then?
Yeah, so I shouldn't say primarily. There's some ad money in there too, but it's mostly that. Like my morning show is almost entirely that. Like DTNS, it's almost entirely a crowdfunded project. But then other shows on the network with various degrees of listenership and or exposure or whatever, some have ads, some don't. I have a general Frog Pants Patreon that's just sort of a throw in for anybody who's not into the TMS thing and is looking for another way to support it. So it's a little ramshackle, partly because when all that stuff came, we were already like Tom and I are good examples of this. And he got lucky with DTNS in my mind because he launched the show right around the time Patreon was literally just starting.
Totally.
It was a perfect marriage of timing and everything else. In my case, it's like I've been trying different stuff over the years, all these different methods. I sell stuff in the store. We have special stuff people did before that was kind of Patreon-like, except we ran it ourselves. Then Patreon came along and it automated a lot of that. So there's a lot of spaghetti on the wall still sticking from old ways of doing it. But yeah, that's a big way of doing it that we do it now.
Now, I remember when Patreon came out, they weren't allowing for international pledges. Has that changed? Do you guys get? Okay.
Yeah, you can do international now.
You guys are just a fount of knowledge, man.
Get this. It's leaking out of us.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah, I just wish one of you could tell me why web audio. I can't hear anything. It's bugging the heck out of me.
Is your computer plugged in? Have you tried restarting it?
Turning it on. What's the name of the program you're using, Roger?
I'm using Voice Meter.
Voice Meter.
MEETER. I think I know what that sound was. I was going through unfortunately, I was going through my inbox of my Gmail. You know how I get those weird emails from people that
make sounds.
Well, no, but unfortunately I clicked on one of the links for it.
I never click on links.
I'm curious because some of this stuff is just.
I'm curious. I want to get malware.
I have never actually no.
So the screaming was actually your computer sobbing at its inevitable diseased death.
Exactly.
You know what? You would not be very far wrong. Yeah,
Cool. Well,
this is.
Thank you all for having me.
Yes,
I
thank you,
appreciate
John.
it to no end, and I like what you guys do, and
vice versa.
It means a lot
everybody
to us.
go visit sci-fiandspies.com and check out the trailer.
Indeed.
All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Ciao.